Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. The topic of today's broadcast is downtown, 4 years after 9/11. My distinguished group of guests include Ken Swig, President of Swig Equities, Stephen Witkoff, President of the Witkoff Group, Stephen Kligerman, Executive Director of Development Marketing, Halstead Properties, Stephen Siegel, Global Chairman, Global Brokerage Resources, CB Richard Ellis, Christopher Daly, President of the Sheldrick Organization, and last but not least, Edward J. Minskoff Equities. Downtown is booming. Suddenly, everybody wants to live downtown. Everybody wants to live. Everybody wants to go to restaurants. Everybody wants to go to PJ Clark's when you open up in a couple of weeks. Everybody's waiting for the Whole Foods to open up at Ed Minskoff's property. Everybody wants to be in Battery Park City. What has happened 4 years? Ken Swig closes on a building 2 weeks ago. He buys 25 Broad. He owns 5 properties over there. Witkoff's converting the Woolworth building. Everything's happening. Kligerman's marketing all of these properties. What's so hot about Lower Manhattan, Mr. Swig?
Well, from my perspective, I think there's an awakening finally of what's going on down there. I mean, I think it's been that way really since 95, 96, 97. But now it's getting a lot more attention. And I think the really fundamental big change is that you've got a residential population downtown that is supplying energy, money, focus into the community there. I mean, the commercial base was always plus or minus the third largest.
You're right, but the commercial base, wasn't it a fact that everybody thought that the commercial base was the low-cost alternative?
Yeah,
when Mr. Siegel would rent space.
You had a large commercial base downtown, but now you've got a residential population that's bringing in the retail and bringing in the energy there. It's the fastest growing residential population in the U.S. right now.
And what about the retail? I mean, we lost 330,000 square feet of retail at the World Trade Center. Where is that retail today?
We'll be back.
Edward.
The commercial wasn't the low-cost alternative prior to 9/11, though. It became a low-cost alternative because of the incentives after 9/11. Before 9/11, the A-quality properties in Lower Manhattan, like World Financial Center, were getting premium rents.
Would you say that they were the same price as Midtown?
No, there's always a gap between Midtown and downtown. But that doesn't mean it's low cost. It's not a low cost alternative is probably another marketplace completely. I'll give you just one quick analogy. Back in the 70s, many of the gentlemen here weren't doing business then, they were going to school. I was doing business in New York City.
You were about 60 years old then?
I was in my early 60s. Thank you. And
Steve was still trying to practice law.
I went over to New Jersey, and there was a little place called the Meadowlands, which was completely vacant, filled with swamps, still had all kinds of wildlife, environmentally protected, etc. And somebody said, look at this place in the shadow of New York City. Something is wonderful about this. Now you go over there, there's millions of square feet, there are football stadiums, there are shopping centers, and every type of life experience you could possibly ask for. Well, downtown is better by far than that. And downtown was already beginning to boom, pre-9/11.
But you know what, as Kent said, downtown has always been the third largest business district in the country. The second behind Midtown, correct?
Well, Midtown being one, Chicago being
number
two. Some people say Washington, D.C. number 3, but downtown has really been number 3.
But I mean, Stephen, you right now you have a number of projects downtown. You last year bought 55 Wall, which was a hotel. You're converting that into a residential condominium.
Cipriani Condos.
It's going to be called Cipriani Condos?
We opened today.
Oh, best of luck.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, what are you projecting the prices of a condominium over there?
I would say we'll probably open up at $13.50 a foot, maybe even north of that.
And
but
what's
it's a very, very high-end product that we're delivering. Very high-end.
$13.50 a foot. On what floor is that?
All over. I mean, it's a fantastic building, but we're going to be delivering hotel-like services into this building. There's going to be a full Cipriani
Is it going to
club.
be what we call a condo hotel, or is it
Not a condo hotel, but it'll have condo-like hotel amenities packages.
similar to the Mandarin at?
Yes, and it's a big statement because Giuseppe's opening up a full restaurant down there, a full Cipriani restaurant with a full Cipriani club, very, very similar to the Cipriani club that's operating in Soho. So it's going to be fantastic. In fact, we were there the other evening because we together sponsor the concert series, which is a wonderful evening. And Steve, we stayed afterwards and we had some drinks on Stone Street. The place was completely alive till 2 o'clock in the morning. I then got in my car and drove up Madison Avenue, where it was completely dead from
lights out,
57th
right?
Street on. There was just absolutely nothing doing.
Right,
Downtown is alive.
Now,
And going to be more alive.
Now-
Now,
I mean,
by the way,
restaurants are coming
Bobby
in.
Vans is coming down.
Bobby Vans, PJ Clark's are opening the end of October. Not that's the second
Downtown's
plug.
been doing it.
No,
Two
but look-
plug. He promised me 3 plugs. That's why I'm here.
Downtown's been seeing a tremendous residential population growth with limited services. Now more and more services are coming. It's only going to get better. And the buyers are seeing that. And the buyers are coming there also. The transportation and access to transportation is it's the best transportation in the city. You can get it's the only place in the city you can get any part of the city within 15, 20 minutes from right on downtown.
But prior to the show, we were talking that downtown there is a lot of transportation, but in Battery Park City, which I believe is a great community, which Edward was involved with at the beginning, it's a different community, even though it's downtown. Would you agree with me or disagree?
Well, the
It's all
west
families.
side of the highway is one alternative to the east side of the highway.
And what type of people do you see buying in the west side of the highway versus the east side of the highway?
On the west side, it's all families. There's families, people who want the park, good schools. It's an affordable place to buy. It's either they're going to move to the suburbs or they'll live in Battery Park City.
What they
Other
need
side of
to-
the highway is a different option.
What they
A
need
lot
to
of the
do is
people-
connect the island of Battery Park City to the island of Manhattan.
Well, Battery
And-
Park
and
City doesn't want to connect. That's the
It
other
would,
problem.
I think it'd be a benefit to both
Well,
sides,
what are you
frankly, if they did
saying
that
that
by-
Battery Park City doesn't want to connect?
Because now it's an island,
Right.
and they like the fact that it's an island.
It's almost a suburban community within the city.
suburban
It's a
urban.
95-acre island within itself. I mean,
I
but
think
the-
if West Street was actually, which they originally thought of doing, is putting,
Underneath.
going over, putting in West Street below, and putting a park connecting that. I think it still would maintain its integrity of Battery Park City, but you'd have a lot more easy access
The problem would
to.
have been the traffic would have been too quick.
But if
You
it's
have like a
below, then
tunnel-
you eliminate the traffic,
All
so
the
you can
tunnels
get
in
back
New
and
York,
forth.
as people approach those tunnels, they speed up, and that would have been the traction, I think, for the tunnel. It
but
wasn't the fact that it would bring people in. I think it was just the
Chris,
speed of crossing the street.
You and Ed are building on Battery Park City. You're really not on Battery Park City,
I'm in
but you're in the
Tribeca.
west. You're in Tribeca. The question that I have is, near your site, you have the new Goldman site, which is 2.5 million
2.1.
square feet, going to cost close to
Is it more than that? I thought it was
2.6 million square feet.
Is it really 2.1 or is it?
What effect do you?
6 usable, it's $1 million.
That's what I was going to
But measurable is probably 3.2.
say. You can't measure it. So
But the big question is, in some of the people, especially the building, you converted 10
Hanover.
Hanover, which Goldman used to be in.
Goldman used to be in it.
Right. Now, what's going to happen when Goldman moves all of these employees from all of these other properties? What's going to happen to these other buildings? Are they going to be converted to residential? I mean, because there have been so many buildings converted to residential over the last couple of
Well,
years.
nobody knows this far in advance how many buildings they're going to vacate. The sense is they may never leave 180 Maiden Lane in its entirety. They're in One New York Plaza. They will never be ready with their new building when their lease comes due there, so they will have to extend for a lease an additional 5 years, taking them to 3 or 4 years past their occupancy of the new building. They will vacate 85 Broad. I can't see them staying there. What precipitated this move was 85 Broad's potential obsolescence for them.
And what do you?
These guys
and
know
what-
better than I whether that's
and
a
you know what?
candidate for conversion.
You just
85 Broad?
Okay, you have how many
Well, not
buildings?
maybe not anymore,
Ken?
just because they're eliminating the incentives.
Plus, it's a tough play with
and the
the
windows are
windows-
horrible, and
It's
it's
a tough
Right,
floor
but you know
plate.
what? Let's get to the incentives. You know, Shelley Silver was very instrumental to get the new incentives for companies. You know, for my audience, would you tell them what type of incentives they've created for a small or large company to move downtown?
He got REAP extended to the Employee Retention Act
No,
benefits.
besides
that's
he got REAP, he got exemption of commercial rent tax permanently in 7 World Trade Center and the potential future.
And the
centers.
World-
Seven
and the
World
World
Trade
Trade
Center,
Center.
the first 700,000 feet of tenants will get an additional $3.85 of benefits as long as Larry Silverstein, the developer and owner, matches that $3.85.
Yeah, but there's also a $5 incentive.
That was in existence before. It had nothing to do with Sheldon Silver. Those benefits were in place for 7 World Trade, the World Trade Center site, before these new benefits equate to $3.85. So somebody
For
can
7
benefit
World.
$5, $3.85 plus theoretically another $3.85 from the landlord. So a total of almost
So for
$12,
some,
$13
for somebody,
worth of
if they were
benefits.
going to rent space,
But you're talking about, for small tenants, it's a completely different picture. I mean, that's for the larger
this is
tenants
for
at
a
7
lo-
World Trade.
Yes,
but
the
this
other
is to
one,
incentivate
there are
the
other
large
but the
benefits. of
small
the
tenants,
small tenants
you
make
have a
difference.
number of small buildings. You have a number of small tenants. If a tenant
No, he has
paid you,
small tenant buildings. He has big buildings.
No, you have both. He has both. If you had some of your tenants who are paying $25 a foot or $28 a foot,
Better.
when you take the incentives and you take away the $2.50 for real estate taxes, you take the the REAP and all the other situations.
Well, if you get the REIT, but it adds up anywhere from $3 to $4. It's $2.50 to $4 a foot, depending on what the the value of the lease is. But it's a big deal. If you're a small private company, it's big money. The big incentives were obviously over for the World Financial Center. The other incentives were it's a 5-year, on top of what was there, it's a 5-year program.
But REAP is big because we were
That's a
losing
large one.
we were losing tenants to Metro
Now,
Tech.
explain to my audience what REAP means.
It gives you a tax credit for each employee that you hire, and it was out there for the other 4 boroughs. I mean, Steve will tell you we lost the Blue Cross Blue Shield deal. That's what really was the impetus.
Right, they went to
Shelley,
Brooklyn.
first of all, Shelley doesn't get the credit that he ought to get. He's maybe the greatest promoter for downtown. Him and Carl Weisbrod, they've done an incredible job. And he, in my opinion, single-handedly lobbied for the REAP package to be downtown. Everybody was against it. And I believe that the impetus for that was the Blue Cross Blue Shield deal being lost to Metrotech. And they went, by the way, to Metrotech because of REAP. I mean, they ran they did the discounted cash flow analysis on REAP, and that was it.
But they could have gone to Harlem if
They were going to go to my building.
Space.
They were going to 125 Broad. They were
Correct.
going to take Citibank space over, and the REAP package was just too powerful. You get a 10-year tax credit that's the equivalent of $3,000 per employee.
Well, in the boroughs, it's 12 years. So.
12, but it's enormous, Eddie. And the point was, why in the world are you incentivizing companies to come, worse yet, out of downtown to go into these outlying?
That's the old borrowing from Peter to pay Paul syndrome. It's ridiculous.
And he convinced everybody. And by the way, and it turned out to be the right decision. He ought to be applauded. It was a great.
No, you're right.
You know, about 2 years ago, when I did a show, and I think Kent might have been on it, and I said that, a lot of people moved downtown, and I think Steve would remember this because of the residential involvement. They moved because they received up to $500 a month for 2 years. And what happens to those tenants who had this $500 a month, and at that time the rents were probably $40 a foot. They're now $50 a foot. Are they staying? Are these people remaining in those apartments?
A lot of them are staying. I mean,
Yes.
not everybody stays anywhere, but most
No,
of them are
I
staying. In
agree.
fact, they fell in love with the neighborhood.
It had
You know,
very
they
little
fell in
impact.
love with the
That was
area.
brilliant.
It was a brilliant
That
idea.
got
It
them
also
back.
worked
They all
out
stayed.
terrific.
Everyone-
Most
I
of
would
them
say
stayed.
May, well, look at your building
I would
right
say
now.
as
How are
close
you
to all
renting?
stayed
I
as
mean,
possible.
They
all
all,
stayed.
by the
it's
way,
a forgotten.
And a
It's a
lot of them
forgotten.
were
It's a long.
renting.
It's a
If they
distant
didn't
memory.
stay, they
of it.
bought down there
Well,
because they wanted
exactly.
to stay. They
I
wanted
mean,
to stay
I was
in the
reading an article
You know what I
about
rented at 10 Hanover? I'm open 12 weeks. 12 weeks I'm open. And that's a rental building, not a co-op or not a condo where people, Eddie, are taking advantage of interest rates or Or, you know, you could argue that maybe there's some speculation going on. I happen to think it's not the case.
There's very little speculation.
That's right. I happen to think it's
Lower
not. But
Manhattan,
I mean,
I don't believe is really a speculation.
well, I don't think it's. I don't think there's speculation anywhere. Certainly not like
right.
Miami.
Well,
I mean,
well,
I think
You
it's
don't think there's
fine.
speculation in New
But
York
I'm
City?
open.
No.
I'm
Listen,
open.
we're
I'm
not
open.
doing
not.
numbers.
I'm open
maybe
12.
less than an eighth of 1%.
Finish up.
I'm
Listen,
open
we're-
12 weeks. 12 weeks, right? So that's not a lot of time. And out of 493 apartments, I've rented 331.
So you're
through
close
today.
to 75%?
331
Great.
in 12
What
weeks.
size apartments
fabulous.
are they? Ones and twos? The
Studios, ones and twos.
And the rent,
By the way,
and what's
I
the
rent
rented a-
range from what?
We're renting at. We opened up at $46, and we're averaging now $48.75.
Now, $46, I want somebody, you know, I don't want to do inside baseball. $46
I did
for
300
someone, what is the
square.
size?
Pardon me?
3 Hanover Square.
Right across the street from me.
I did that building over almost 25 years ago.
Steve,
That's our
what,
neighbor
what,
at five.
what is a one bedroom? I want to try to give my audience an idea. How many square feet?
600 square feet.
Yeah.
So 600 square feet times 40.
2,500.
3 to 500 is a studio.
About
2,500 to
about
$3,000
$2,400 a month.
Yeah.
But
Plus.
we have a big incentives package. There's a 30,000 square foot gym in the building with a mountain
What's
climbing wall.
the incentive package? I mean,
No, I mean, we have a big
Amenities.
amenities package. We have. It's a fabulous building. It's really a
The
fabulous.
incentive
building.
is you get to be in Steve's building.
But I
That's the
want to.
incentive.
But I want to.
yeah,
tell
but
you,
they, but they can
are
have
the
the
health club
opportunity.
and other
Right.
things.
But I want to tell you this about downtown. You know, the city, and again, now this is Madeline Wills, Community Board 1. I mean, you have some really.
Julie Menon now.
Yeah, Julie Menon.
She's
I mean,
now
no,
the
but you have
president.
some really smart.
Who's not leaving?
She's the president.
Right.
But you have some
Exactly.
really smart, energetic people involved in downtown. You know, it's funny when Kent. I'll bet you if you say to Kent, what was one of the reasons like you went down to downtown Manhattan in 1995? I mean, you had all these really incredible people with all this energy looking to invest down there, and people like. I think me and Kent looked at ourselves and said, boy, if they're going down there, I think maybe we ought to be going there. Like when the Rudin family announced, you have that
But
same...
in 1994, people bought buildings for $5 a foot. Let's remember when Rock Rose bought 45 Wall and
$20 a foot.
I paid $12 million for 10 Hanover. It's 550,000 feet.
so what does that come out to a foot?
$24.
Yeah.
$24 a foot.
But you know what's going to happen?
You're
What's
getting
gonna be-
$46 a foot to rent.
You looked at a building, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember the address, at $5 million, you thought it was too expensive. You
Well, we
wanted
bought-
to buy it for $3.
we
I forget
bought-
which
yeah.
one it was.
We bought, wow, boy, those were some buys. I remember we bought 8090 Maiden Lane.
That's
And we
yeah.
paid $53 a foot, and
Thank
we
you.
obsessed about it. We said, "Oh my
Where
God,
did
we're
you
paying,
get it
we're
from?
paying through the market."
That was from us.
We said, right? We said no, but we said
Leave that
we said
alone.
we're paying through the market on that deal. But I'll tell you one thing that's going to be amazing for downtown. You know, downtown converges in the most narrow pattern. And now they've done a lot of things with they're doing a lot of things with the piers on the west side of Manhattan. And if you've seen some of the drawings, they're going to redo the entire riverfront on the east side of Manhattan. There's going to be some fantastic things done over there.
Well, there's two. One of the things, if you look at prior to 9/11, the big issue commercially, if you look, the biggest complaint was transportation, and it wasn't, frankly, the amount of railroad track, because there's more railroad track there than there is in any other city per square foot, any other city in the U.S., including Midtown. The delivery system was horrendous. Now, and this is really the big change, which I think is going to boost the commercial, is the fact that you've got a good transportation system and a delivery system that'll get you there nicely. You got 4 major new hubs.
Do you
that
think?
are going
Do you
in.
think you need the?
But
That's
Kent,
gonna be-
also, we talked about this at dinner. The New York Times in December, and this wasn't an advertisement, wrote a full two-page article, might have been even 3 pages, talking about Tribeca and that southern tip becoming an oasis to live in. I mean, just went on and on and on about the quality of life down there, why people should live down there, the change in significant change over a short period of time, what has developed, both restaurants and the residential changeover that it wasn't there 15 years ago.
There's no doubt. I think you combine that with the transportation system and delivery system, that it's revolution. You know what it's done is put downtown back into where it was in the 1800s. The 1800s, it was the center of the residential population. It was the center of the commercial population, and it had a transportation system second to none anywhere in the U.S., frankly, because a lot of other places didn't have anything. And what we're doing is we're recreating, frankly, the past by putting in the residential population back and putting in a transportation system back and recreating what was there in the 1800s when it was the focal point of New York. Not that it's going to surpass necessarily Midtown, but in terms of rivaling Midtown and being a real place to go, not just in Midtown, that's what's happening there.
Yeah, I think relating to this and what Steve said before, when he left Cipriani in Soho and he went uptown on Madison Avenue, are we seeing higher prices for condominiums in Battery Park City or Tribeca, where you're building, Eddie, and than some of the Upper East Side today?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
not even a
certainly-
doubt in my
certainly
mind.
in
The
Tribeca.
pricing Steve
Yeah, well,
just
it is, yeah.
mentioned for the
For the
Cipriani
rental.
apartments, that would exceed probably 80% of the projects.
You know,
in the Upper East Side.
downtown is not what Midtown is yet, but the meatpacking district, as an example, which is a lot more closer to downtown than it is to Midtown, is blowing through what Midtown
they've
is
got
getting,
$2,000 foot plus.
what the Upper East Side
Sure,
is
not
getting
even close.
today.
East Side is
They
affordable now for young
They sold the
kids.
penthouse at 165 Charles at $44.75 a square foot. And by the way, it's a walk from there to downtown. So
Let's,
the whole market is
what about Siami's development that he's
80 South
projecting?
Street.
80 South Street,
The
29 million.
stacked townhouses?
The stock townhouses, $29 million, starting at
That
$29
might be
million.
a reach.
$35 million.
Tell you what, though,
I'll tell
Steve,
you.
he claims, and not to me, I haven't talked to him, but he claims that he sold a number of them. The fact that that particular architect would sign on to do that project over there is a major statement.
I agree.
That he's an
Calatrava
amazing
design
architect.
is amazing. The concept is unique. You only have to sell 10 or 13 of them, depending on what they end up being able to build. They're columnless. You actually get full floors without one column. You can't find that
I mean,
anywhere.
unobstructive views
Unobstructed.
forever.
And he can split,
360
and he can
degrees.
split them up if he needs to.
And-
you know,
and if need be, they
one
can
cube
split
is
them.
too big.
I mean, I think it will happen.
You only
It'd
need
be a
without
great
doubt.
statement for
No,
New
no,
York.
I
I'll
got
give you an
fabulous
example.
statement. It's an
Steve's doing
extraordinary
Cipriani 1350 a foot and up. I just went to contract on a building on 75th and Columbus, and we're going to price it at probably somewhere between 1,200 and 1,300 at the top end. Magnificent location, great apartments,
At
pre-war
those numbers,
building, high
you'll be
ceiling.
beating him off with a stick.
Well, but my point is, I'm not over him. I'm not doing 1,500, 1,800, or 2,000. I mean, so
I mean,
the
Kent has
pricing's
something
right there for the right
And by the
product.
way, Steve,
it's
if
right
I
there.
tell you, I could have sold the entire building 5 times over to single European buyers
Yeah.
who then wanted to take the entire building and syndicate it back in Europe.
Yeah,
I
we-
could have sold it 5 times over,
Yeah.
and we wouldn't do it because
Yeah.
we didn't want to dilute, the brand, and we really
Now,
wanted to.
what are you doing at the Woolworth building? Are you going to do another Cipriani?
No, we're just going to. But we're converting. 110,000 feet.
You're converting the top of the
Just the
building.
top of the building from floor 28 on. And those views are unparalleled.
fabulous.
I
They're
think
4,000 foot
I
floors,
think,
and
and
they're
it's not
gorgeous.
because I own the building. I'm not sort of pumping the building, but I believe. No, but we're not in the market. I just believe that building, if there are no exigencies in the market, that building will achieve big numbers, which will be a huge rubber stamp for the top of the market in downtown.
Yeah, I think
I
that
agree.
building could reach 2,000
I mean,
foot.
I think that building
But the
will
reason,
exceed 2,000
but you know what it is? You don't have anything.
By the way,
but you don't have
I'm
anything in the
here
bottom.
to say that Steve Siegel is a partner in that deal. Okay, so I thought we would just
That makes my comment less credible.
Here's the
Wait
thing.
a second.
I'll tell you what.
It's
I'll
like
tell you
Larry
what works.
Kudlow on a show saying, I own some stock in here. I'm telling you a little bit about the investment.
you know why it works?
You should buy it.
No,
I
but you
really
know why
wanted
it
Wendy
works?
to know that. That's why I'm announcing
Thanks,
that
Steve.
now.
why it works is because you also don't have to margin down on it. I mean, you've got the cream of the building. It's
the best
So
part.
Absolutely.
when everybody's getting, and you're looking at what you're getting over, or what you will be getting at the Cipriani on Wall Street, you've got
Take
your
the bottom of the
bottom
floors
part
out.
of the building. You don't have the views. You've got services. This is taking the cream top of the building. You don't.
No,
you're
I
not gonna
couldn't
have
agree
to
with you
margin.
more.
And I
one
will
of-
get it.
But one of
It
the
will.
things that I was that
You'll
that
push
one of the,
18 to
but one of the
2200
nice
a foot.
things about
Really will.
55 Wall is that Giuseppe is coming down there. That's a huge thing. He's making a major statement. I mean, when you have restaurateurs like him, I mean, he's as good a restaurateur as maybe it gets out there in the world today.
Today, I think you're
He-
right.
He's just that good. So, and he's making a commitment to downtown. It's a full restaurant that's
Speaking
coming
of that, Edward was talking, Edward's building on, tell us a little bit about the property that you're building downtown?
We have a 90,000 square foot footprint on West Street, Warren Street, Greenwich, and Murray. It's been a parking lot for probably longer than any of us here are old, and it's gone through a half a dozen different iterations, from Drexel Burnham's world headquarters to Comax's headquarters, and on and on and on. And finally has come to a point where this retail residential development that we're doing down there is the end of the line. I think it's probably the 110% location downtown. We've got fantastic views. We've designed a quality building that hasn't been done in New York in 15 years.
Now, is it two buildings? One is a condo and one is a rental?
No, there are three elements now, three condominiums actually. There's a retail condominium which has a 450-car garage and 173,000 square feet of retail on 2 levels. There's a 163 rental apartments, which is a combination of market rents and subsidized housing. And then we have 232 luxury condominiums. The rental units are on Murray and Greenwich, and the condominium units are located on West and Warren.
Separate entrances?
The condominiums have 2 lobbies on Warren Street, and the rental units have 1 entrance, 1 lobby on Murray. The apartments, 10 12-foot ceiling heights, large space,
Oh, that's gonna be amazing.
bull top kitchens.
And that,
I mean,
and
it's going to be beautiful.
And you're going to have a
Fabulous
whole.
finishes.
You're going to have a Whole Foods.
We have a
hopefully?
55,000 square foot Whole Foods going in on 1 level, which is kind of unique because they do have a number of units. Well, the one in Columbus Circle is 1 level, but it's 1 level below grade. One of their units is 3 levels. This will bring something to that neighborhood that they desperately need.
I mean, there's been a need for a supermarket for years. That's the
A
biggest.
lot of families down there order
Fresh Direct.
from Fresh Direct. Here they can go in and feel and touch. If they work down there, they can come home at 9 o'clock at night and get a great meal by just going down to Whole Foods and get a selection of
They'll
cooked
transform
food.
Battery Park too.
And then you said
amazing
there's going to be a Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, we're putting in a 38,000 square foot Barnes and Noble, and
And a restaurant. And
we're doing a restaurant right on the corner. Won't compete with Steve because it'll be a little higher end. But
What's Steve's restaurant called?
My Steve, I have
no,
PJ Clark's.
Steve's
My-
restaurant, you know, is just
That's
PJ
three
Clark's.
times.
My,
That's
only,
three. We have
my
3
restaurant
times.
only makes money.
When do you start, Eddie?
we're going to start in October.
And who's the architect?
Next month? Wow.
Yes. SOM is doing the exterior, and Ishmael Levia is doing the apartment layouts.
And Chris, aren't you? You're building on the last site in BPC in Battery Park City. And what are you doing there?
500,000 square feet, 300 apartments. We're the last waterfront site, as you say. We've got an interior park, 32-story
The
building.
Teardrop Park.
Teardrop Park comes into our building, designed by an architect named Van Valkenburg.
Excuse
Terrific
me for
layout.
interrupting, Chris, but part of the history of the site that Chris is building on, which shows you the transition and the dynamic of what's going on downtown, Site 16 and 17 was going to be Brown Brothers Harriman's world headquarters. And now Chris is developing an outstanding residential development.
Was it going
on
to be connected to World Financial Center?
No, it wasn't. It's just it was a special adjustment in the commercial zoning down there
They were
because
going to anchor it
when-
with 400,000 or 500,000.
yeah, when I developed World Financial Center back in '81 to '86, the 17-acre commercial core was so designated commercial core with no other commercial buildings to be built down there. Well, they've moved at it in a different direction, both by developing and approving Site 26,
26, Goldman.
which is where Goldman Sachs' new world headquarters is going, which I think is great.
You know,
but
with
still
regard
there's-
to Goldman, a number of people said that when they stated a couple of months ago they were going to look Midtown, it was really a ploy. with the exception of Mr. Siegel, who cannot make that type of comment.
Well,
No,
you
I
know,
can
there-
make
I
any
think they were
comment.
committed.
I think they were negotiating.
They were committed.
Yeah.
No, they were committed to downtown. They would have stayed working downtown. I think the state, frankly, didn't listen to what their comments were. Really,
So
at
I
the end of
think
the day,
they're-
they were very serious. They said, "Here's what we're going to do."
They got some
If-
great incentives.
But
I
they
mean,
did- but
they
let
did
me
get a
tell-
lot of Liberty bonds,
But they walked from the deal.
saving
first.
$100 million.
Understatement.
Well, they walked because of the tunnel.
They-
That's
they-
exactly.
That as the
Nobody
ploy
took them
to
seriously.
walk.
But I don't think anybody took them seriously, and listened to them. And I think had they done that, I don't think they would have been able to walk so easily and end up with the incentives.
Do you
they
think?
had.
I
Do
think-
you
I
think
think
they
the
gave too
governor
much
and the mayor
incentives?
needed the
Do
deal.
you think the city
That's
gave?
That's the whole piece.
Do you think the city and the state
Governor
gave
and the
way
mayor
too many
couldn't let the
incentives?
deal not
No.
go through.
But
Why?
before
That
that,
was
you
it.
think they would have needed
They
to
had
give
to
the
keep
deal
them
if they'd
downtown.
listened
Oh,
to them
yeah,
They really
originally?
did.
Absolutely.
I don't
There was
think
no
they-
option. You
Listen,
couldn't
if-
have
no
anywhere
option.
else.
But I think that the incentives may not have been needed if they were listened to a little bit more at the beginning.
I think not to. This is not a voice. This is not an opinion based on any fact whatsoever. No matter what, they would have taken one last bite of the apple. See the apples? Can you flash on the apples? Goldman Sachs would have taken
But
one
they would
last
have
bite
had
of
a
the
different
apple.
reason to have to. It would have been a tough
they would have
way
found
to do
another
it.
way to
Now,
do it.
but
You know,
let's-
Ken, I
They
did a
would've
deal
done
with
it.
Goldman Sachs,
they
and
would've
they're,
done
and
it.
by the way, and I think they're probably tougher in the way they negotiate today than even when I did the deal with them, because they're a public company, so they have to negotiate like that. But I think that I applauded every dollar of incentives that was given. I think Cahill and Silver and Charlie did a
The
great
right way
job
to
with
do it,
them.
There's no doubt.
I
But
think
now,
that they
Stephen, I have a question.
and I'll tell you something else too. I don't think it was just them playing chicken. I think there are many divergent interests within Goldman. There are people who want to be in Midtown, and there are partners who want to be downtown, and there was that tension point. But the fact is, if they would have moved, it would have cast a pall for quite some time. Not on downtown. I don't think at the end of the. I think at the end of the day we would have made up for it, but it would not have been a good thing.
But
This-
here's
excuse me.
It
Go
adds
ahead, Eddie.
momentum. It would not have necessarily decelerated momentum,
Right.
but this adds
Yeah,
momentum.
it would have been a psychological
the-
hit that
yes.
would have been a major
Well, look
impact.
what
The city
JP
would have
Morgan
been
Chase did
seven
as a
worlds,
result
would
of
have-
that. They took a lot of space back
The
off
city
the
made a
marketplace, I
mistake
think.
a number of times over the years in losing some very big tenants to Stanford.
Jersey City. And
Stanford first, okay, which they
UBS
shouldn't have,
and-
because it was a nominal consideration differential between what Stanford, Connecticut
Swiss
was
Bank, which is now
offering,
UBS.
Swiss
Yeah,
Bank,
it
and whether they should have stayed in New York. And the same thing happened with a couple of companies who moved out to Jersey City that should have really kept their people in Manhattan. So, you know, the price that they paid, both the city and the state, giving the additional incentives to Goldman, if you amortize that over a 20 or 30-year period, is a very nominal
There's
cost.
no doubt it was the right decision.
Cities-
No, I
the
agree with you,
city's
right.
Could we
program
have gotten?
is-
Could we have kept them for less? Was the question.
I don't think that's the question. My question right now is, we had $8 billion of Liberty bonds for residential. Today, I think there's maybe $100 million left, if that much. The city, New York City, HDC, they're all used up. There's a little bit left on the state, and that's
not for residential. You're talking about for
no,
commercial.
no, for residential. There's about $100 million left in total. Right now, with Goldman getting $1.7 billion of Liberty bonds, there's not much left for commercial. Now, if Larry or whatever it is going to build a Freedom Tower or a variety of buildings over there, he, according to what I hear, he would need those Liberty bonds. What's
In addition
doesn't
to
need
the
the
insurance,
Liberty, he doesn't
is
need
what
the
you're
Liberty
saying.
bonds to build the Freedom Tower.
Wait,
Would they
Freedom
be
Tower is only
helpful?
one. Wait, Stephen, the Freedom Tower is one building. How many square feet does he want to replace? How much square foot is in the
11
footprint?
million feet.
11 million
5
feet.
additional buildings. The next one is Freedom Tower 2.7, then there's, or 3.2, whatever it is, then there's 2.2, is building 2, and then another 2 million, a million
The
7.
thing
I
is,
mean, it's
let's hope
Liberty
we
bonds
don't
are
go
long-
back.
a
Let's hope
long
we don't
way
go
off.
back. Right. We don't want to go back to
How many-
1977.
those,
how
Liberty,
many-
those Liberty bonds would not be there for those additional
Absolutely.
towers, regardless of Goldman
Okay,
Sachs.
But there's an
but-
allocation for the World Trade Center. Liberty bonds don't make or break a project. What they
Liberty
are is
bonds
they-
help you.
That's right, but,
reduce
they're-
your
but, they're-
cost.
but it's a triple tax-free mechanism, and so maybe it takes the cost of your loan down by something less than 100 basis
Yeah, I mean,
points.
that's-
You have a low interest rate
that's not-
environment
doesn't
today.
make or break a
right?
project.
Either you're getting good solid rents or you're not. By the way, if you don't get good rents, why would you build anyway? Even if you got a good 100 basis point break.
I
on
think
your
that's my
interest rate.
question now. We have 7 World Trade, or otherwise known as 250 Greenwich, which allegedly, according to Mr. Siegel and the other press, there is one tenant. How big is the building, Stephen?
1.7 million.
1.7 million, and they have one tenant who's ready to sign a lease for 40,000 square
No, I
feet.
did not. I said we have one tenant close to signing. And
No,
we
no,
have
one tenant has signed,
5 to
wasn't it?
6. No, nobody signed yet. We
So
have
American
5
Express has
They
not.
haven't even signed yet. We have 500,000 to 600,000 feet of active lease negotiations, and we have another 500,000 to 600,000 square feet of tenants who walk through and have run plans and are going through their own internal deliberations as to whether they'll have an interest or not. I believe the momentum for that building will pick up dramatically. It's one of the finest buildings in the country in terms of its efficiencies and life safety issues and price for a brand new building. Regardless of its price point as it relates to downtown and some of the other product, it's priced as good or better than any building in the United States.
What about to Midtown?
It's substantially less expensive than any product that could even be considered in the same sentence as
It's a fraction of the
7
cost.
World. Fraction of the
What type of
could be
rents?
as we could probably put a
Face.
tenant here tomorrow with rent starting in the 40s. A huge tenant with great incentives and concessions.
40s gross
Compared
or
to
net?
Yeah,
gross.
B space in Midtown going for
Gross.
that.
Brand
That's
new
un-
space.
by the way,
compared
that's unbelievable.
Compared to 80 plus for 1095 into the Americas, 100 according to Douglas Durst for the Bank of America Tower, in the high 70s to 80s for the New York Times Tower. I mean, I'll give you all the product
No,
that
but
you could
okay,
consider in the same
we have a
sentence.
gentleman here who
It's
owns
half
5
the
number of office buildings in Lower Manhattan. What are you seeing in rents today? And what are you seeing in activity?
Very different market.
And
I
I
mean, our-
agree, you have different
We
buildings.
have, we have what, plus or minus about 3.4 million feet, but it's all multi-tenant space. We're getting anywhere from $28 to $32 a square
And
foot
he's
today,
positioned-
without incentives.
He's-
Without the incentives, and you put it in there. It's again, it's a fraction of what the Midtown market is offering.
But Ken has cornered the product that in the next 3 to 5 years he'll be in, if I might say so, the catbird seat because of all the conversions. All his competitive product
be gone.
is significantly disappearing and being diminished.
How many
So
more
somebody
conversions
wants
do
to
we
go
see?
for 3 to 25,000 feet, they're not going to have too many places to go, and his rents are going to rise dramatically over the next 3 to 5
How many
years.
more buildings do you see being converted?
I'll
The
advise
the 421Gs, which was the 14-year tax abatement, you have to have the building permit ready before next August. How many buildings? I mean, everybody wants to convert a building. In Tribeca, I think it's even worse. I mean, Tribeca, any building
Worse or pronounced? It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
pronounced.
That's
More
good.
active, you mean?
More.
Yeah.
I mean, any building today. I mean, if you take the New York Law, that was $500 a foot. There's property right in the neighborhood. Everything is selling for vacant $400 a foot, Steve.
I would.
A
yes,
shell?
Yes.
Just the shell. And how much does it cost
Somebody
to
offered me a
construct?
50,000 foot site today. I can't remember what exactly was buildable. It was a 50,000 foot
You only
footprint.
take unbuildables.
$610 a foot.
The answer to your question, Michael, is that the answer to your
Now that
question
Central
is.
Park South.
I turned it down. No, didn't try
I
that.
know, okay.
But the answer to your question is it costs a lot more to construct today than it did 6 months ago. A lot more, and most people don't understand
Yeah,
that.
the price of
And
steel
you're going
has
to
gone
see,
up.
and in my opinion,
Steel has gone nuts.
that will be
No,
the.
steel's coming down.
Steel's coming
Back
down.
down?
Concrete's
Steel's
up-
come down
concrete's up
from
dramatically.
4,200
And now we're gonna have
to
a problem
about
with drywall.
3,500.
Labor
And
costs
you're
are
gonna
way
build
up.
out
You're
of
going to have a big
concrete,
problem with, you're going to have
We're
a big problem with
building,
building supplies in general with New Orleans.
Through the first 46 feet, which is the retail podium, is steel.
And then you'll go concrete.
And then
on
we go
top.
concrete.
Do you have any retail in
No,
Europe?
a very small component. It was sucked up by a Poet's House, which is a not-for-profit in, I think they're in Tribeca now, and they're moving into our building, and we're building a New York City public library, which Goldman is funding almost
Yeah, now,
entirely.
what about retail in Lower Manhattan today? I mean, besides the fact that, which is the fourth plug for Mr. Siegel's P.J. Clark,
And Cipriani's.
and Cipriani.
Should be his partner.
If and you just have to go through the community board again next week, but you'll probably get it approved. You don't have supermarkets. You have greengrocers over there. You have more restaurants, but not that many. You don't have really enough retail amenities. And these
All
people,
coming.
It'll
There's a
fall.
lot
Edwards,
Oh,
it's-
Edwards Supermarket, that's it.
You got demographics, you get retail.
But you got the,
We got schools, we got everything
the
coming.
demographics are there.
That's all you
The
need.
retailers are just figuring it out right now, and they've been slow to come. But let me tell you, when BMW opened up on Wall Street, they're not a foolish company. I think they did their homework, they looked at everything, and they figured out where they should be, and they put themselves on Wall Street.
What a major
and
statement.
They did it because Saturdays and Sundays is not filled with all the office tenants
It's a
running
block
around.
from
It's a
Houston.
huge amount of tourists and
Right.
a lot of residents.
BMW.
from
From
55?
Right.
The weekends
block.
is pretty vibrant down
It's
there.
very vibrant.
On Saturdays and Sundays, it's a very vibrant.
Marriott
According to
10
Century
years ago,
21,
ago, you walked
They
around
used to have a
Century
higher
20
occupancy rate on the weekends.
Today
When the
it's
World Trade
booming.
Center was up with all the retail there, they had a higher occupancy with hotels on the weekends than they did during
They
the
still
week.
do today. The
It's-
hotels that
it's
are
a-
open today are
weekend-
busier than during the week.
Cirque du Soleil wants a permanent location down there. There's going to be a major ice facility down there. I mean, I'm telling you, this is 24 hours, 7 days a week. This is a city within a city. It's not going to be Midtown, downtown. This is going to be Midtown and the new New York City.
gonna be better.
The
It's gonna be
new
closer,
New York City.
denser.
That's what downtown
Now
is.
my
It's
question.
Walk to everything.
It's exactly
Now
right.
my
Opposed to
question for
Midtown.
Steve,
Yes.
and, the two Steves and Kent and everyone sitting here is who's buying, who's renting down there? I mean, are there people Steve Siegel's age? Since he said he's the oldest one sitting here, or are they all yuppies? I mean, I
I'm
did a
not the
show.
oldest one. Eddie's older than me.
We're seeing
I
a
worked,
broad,
I worked for Eddie when I broke into the business. I was a runner for him.
we're seeing a broad range of buyers.
Eddie's
Michael.
going down.
A very broad. We have empty nesters. We have families.
That's why I
we have
separated the two
singles.
of you. I just
You have a lot of.
I would
It's everybody. It's the
I
gamut.
would not
It's not what it
pigeonhole it
was
as a
10 years
neighborhood
ago.
for one single type of person. At 50 Pine Street, we have loft-style apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We have people moving in from the suburbs who are empty nesters who want to live in Manhattan. We have families moving in. We have singles moving in. We have Europeans who are coming in who want a second home in Manhattan. It's not just one demographic of people. Plus, look at all the jobs that are coming and all the people that are coming to the area. We have to house them. And people are always going to want to buy, and especially in a low interest rate environment, it's a very,
And how much,
very
with
attractive-
regard to low interest rate, how much are people putting down, and what type of mortgages are they taking, and how much of their income are they spending on housing, would you say?
A lot of people are putting down as little as possible, 10%, financing 90%. The smart ones are taking 30-year loans because they're cheap. People who are more incentive-based are taking interest-only loans because they want to pay off a large bulk when their bonus comes in January or February, where they typically used to keep their housing debt at about 30%. They're probably ranging 40 to 45% now. They're stretching a little bit, but they're stretching to live in Manhattan rather than live in the suburbs. They want a quality of life. They want to be able to see their kids. They want to be able to go with their kids to school, drop them off before they go to work, maybe come home from work, see them, then go back to the office. You have a lot of two-income families now, so people need to be close to home.
But also, you
Yes.
have to keep in mind that in Lower Manhattan, they have some of the finest schools in the city. You have PS 234, which
You have
is,
Stuyvesant.
is the
Stuyvesant,
finest
IS 89
public
is a great
school,
school.
kindergarten through
89.
6th grade. PS 89, Stuyvesant. These are
You have
outstanding.
the new public school being built in Ratner's property
Public
on the
school,
old
and you've got some great
downtown.
private schools now as
Claremont.
well.
Yeah.
Two or
Going
three
on
other
Broad Street.
locations being scouted right now for
It's
public
extraordinary.
schools downtown.
And they're not opening up
Claremont's a good school.
to
Claremont's
attract
good
people
private
to live
school.
there. They're opening up as a result of people already living down there. It takes,
What you ask about retail. What you have is you have a wheel. You have a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have some commercial space. The residential conversion, which really started in the 90s. Kent just bought a building that was converted in 1997. I think they paid $5 or $10 a foot for it and converted it for another 80 or 90 million, whatever. He just bought a magnificent building at 25 Broad Street. That
Otherwise
started
known
back-
as the Exchange. today.
But that started in 1997.
Great
So
building.
these conversions didn't start post-2001, how you introduced the show. This has already been evolving. So now
10
you've
years
got
in the making.
residential. So residential now, all of a sudden, viable price gapping and available labor supply says to some commercial people, this is a good place for me to go. My people are no longer complaining about double commutes, an extra 30 minutes. They're right here. So you get upward mobility, you get young companies, advertising agencies, publishing, looking downtown as a viable alternative. HIP, a couple of others that have moved downtown. You've now got the retail to start to follow. You got the demographics, and there were 10,000 apartments, Steve, on the boards right now, under construction or being converted. That's another 20,000, 30,000 people. BMW makes a statement. People are going to come now. They're going to work here. They're going to stop and shop here. They're going to buy cars here. They live here. That's going to more retail is going to follow. Restaurants are just the tip of the iceberg.
No, I'm not talking only restaurants. I mean, I remember Stephen Witkoff being on my show about a year ago and saying that somebody...
I made that show?
You made that show. You made that
That
show.
didn't cost me 50 today. It did.
Stephen Witkoff being on my show, and he said, Lower Manhattan is the greatest opportunity for a young person to first own a piece of the apple.
That's what I said.
And-
Just like that. And I also said, and Kent was here, I wish I could find more buying opportunities, and I can't.
But I think you did mention something which, when I'm listening to now, is different. You said certain people could buy in Lower Manhattan at that time for $500 a foot. Somebody might have had the opportunity.
There was a big spread.
There was
Always
a big
1,000%
spread.
Right. Dan, for apartments?
No, wait,
Absolutely.
we're not talking.
Last
We're
year.
talking
A year ago.
Sure.
I know
10
it's
months
so,
ago.
yes.
10 months ago, you could buy for
Now,
$500.
if they could find something for 900, they'd be lucky now. That's right.
And when Shia Boimel-Green was on the show, when
That's
he
why it
said,
was the greatest
correct,
buying
When
opportunity.
Shia Boimel-Green was on the show and he bought 15 Broad, and I had the lender, Pat Crandall from Fremont, saying we were worried that he was paying $100 a foot for this building, and we underwrote the building that he could sell it for $400 a foot. And he opened the building for $500. Then he took it off, and the average price there is $1,300 a foot.
No,
No, it's not
in
13.
the
sold
high
that around
70s.
$750.
Not
In
in
the high sevens
70s.
average, but his
Yeah.
last
He's not in the
apartment,
high sevens.
his last apartments was selling
He's
in the
through-
950
That's
range.
right.
Right,
952,000.
and then across the street from where
he's
from
not
where
average.
Edward
Not
is
accurate.
building.
First of all, he's getting north of 1150
No,
now.
now,
He is.
but I'm saying when he
He's crossed the
because he sold a
900
lot.
barrier on his average, Steve.
Okay, on the average, okay.
He's crossed the 900 on his average, and that's where they are.
But
you know,
let's
Michael,
talk. I just want to bring where Edward is. Jack Resnick and Sons opened up a couple weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, their office, their sales office at 200 Chambers. They've sold more than 50% of the units so far.
They've sold 140 out of 240.
All right, 140, and average price close to $1,450 a foot.
well, he's going to set a new record at his project. Eddie is, and that's going to be a wonderful rubber
But
stamp for
let's
downtown.
get to the
Yeah,
point.
here's
What
a great
happened to the
location.
$500 opportunity?
It's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Those who got in, you know
gone.
why? People are like lemmings. They all sat on the sidelines. A couple of smart people made some good
Especially the
plays,
retailers,
and now
they're
they're all
really-
coming down, and that always happens.
But also-
Everybody wants what you know. The one thing that the overarching thing that transcends all of this is that New York is a fabulous place. Everybody wants to live here,
But you
right,
know
Eddie?
what?
And
The
you talk
key
to
is that these are users. They're
Right.
not. These
You
aren't
talk to
investors. They're
international
people who
people.
want to
He's
use
on
these.
the quote-unquote
And
This
that's
is
the
not
problem.
Miami.
Right.
This is
That's
not
right.
Miami.
That's
This is
but that's a
Listen,
big issue to say.
You have people from Hollywood, from Southern California, wanting to move to New York.
It's unbelievable.
But
And they're not
and
going to
that
move
the
to the
big
Upper East
thing
Side.
is
They'll
because
move to
They
his
want to, and they
building.
want to move
They'll
down.
move to the Woolworth building. They'll move to
Downtown.
something
They want
that's
something
sexy. They're
unique.
not
They
gonna
want
move
something funky. They want a sexy
Michael,
apartment.
They don't want to live in a townhouse.
Michael,
more space for
Michael,
the
the next
They don't wanna
question
live
that
in
all
a
your
townhouse.
viewers are going to
And they
ask
want
is,
services,
is
which
there
you
a,
can get.
you know, the next one, if these prices are going like this, is there a bubble? There's a big difference. The market in Manhattan is a user market. People aren't buying these apartments with the expectation that they're going to rent them and make an investment. Of course, they don't want to lose money, but at the end of the day, if there's a flattening of the marketplace, these aren't people who are saying, oh, now what am I going to do? Who am I going to rent
They're
these
coming
to?
here to live.
They're coming here to
Exactly.
live, and that's a big difference.
So
You know,
you're
Michael,
you're
come to-
saying
come to
That's-
families.
No,
I
we also
talked-
had 1 million people come into New York over the last 10 years.
But
And, you know,
but-
dispersed
and the
throughout the five
population for the
boroughs.
first
If
time
you're
since the
a kid-
50s
You have to house
is
them
actually
somewhere.
going up. We're
if you're a
increasing our
kid
population.
and you're coming out of school and you want to make your mark in this life, make money, which is not the end all and be all, but if that's what you want to do, you have to be in New York City. You talk to any bank out there, Wachovia, Deutsche Bank, Bloomberg, they get more hits on their site to work in locations in New York City than in any other place. 500 murders in a city with 8 to 10 million people. It's incredible. I was in Sao Paulo last week.
They have more in a week there.
They have
Were you ducking all the time?
It's a good city,
No, I
Steve.
know, I know.
You know something? They've done an exceptional job policing this city. There's a fantastic quality of life. The service package is unparalleled in this town. It's just
Well,
a
Eddie-
fabulous place.
Well,
the
there's a
greatest
big
medical,
difference.
the greatest medical facilities that you could ever in your wildest dreams imagine.
There's
They
a-
all want to be here.
There's a
There's a
big
guy-
difference between the quality of life
culturally,
in
there's no city
2005
in the
Manhattan
world
than there was
that
in the late
can
80s and early 90s.
compete,
And
that's what we need.
and
That's
what's
what we need
happening.
I wanna tell you
downtown.
something
We need
about
more
the-
cultural
about the quality of
institutions
life. Edward S. Gordon is a name familiar to us, maybe not to the viewers.
One of my favorites, Steve, who you introduced me to.
I mean, a character of all characters, unfortunately prematurely passed away in 2000. But Ed Gordon said in 1995 or 6,
I was
he
with
said,
you.
the quality of life in this city is evolving. to a new level. And once it does, that's not a cycle like a business cycle. That's 20, 25 years.
He called it a 25-year uptrend, and he said, I was sitting with Steve, he called it a 25-year uptrend. I'll never forget it. He called it a 25-year uptrend, and he said, you may have itsy-bitsy little blips in between, but basically New York City is on a 25-year
That's
uptrend.
exactly what he said.
People will refuse to go back to where we were in the 70s.
It's not gonna
and
happen.
80s.
Well, by the way,
Nobody can let it
you know
happen.
something, Chris? I'll tell you this. I belong to a golf club out in Long Island, and to a person, everybody wants to move. I mean, you know, North Shore of Long Island, everybody wants to move out and come into the city.
Of course.
Everybody wants
hear
to be
it
in
all the
Manhattan.
time, Steve.
And the one thing that we're not talking about is that the Europeans are buying Manhattan heavy.
Yes.
Because there's a huge discount in the euro, and they all want to
35 to
come here and they want to
40%.
visit.
We're not
And
the
that-
only. We're
and
not
to
the only
ex-
trend like that. It's the reurbanization of America. I mean, it's center cities
But
all
here-
over the
Right,
country.
look at White
St.
Plains.
Louis,
People-
places
people
like you would
want-
never think.
Look at San Francisco. You look at a lot of the cities, urban. There's a resurgence all over because the quality of life,
Boston,
the energy. It's
San Francisco.
people
It
want
all-
to
it
be
all
in
centers
urban
on
centers. We
People
happen to
wanna
be
walk to eat
among the
and
more
get entertained,
dynamic
and shop.
of the rest.
They don't want
but
to have to get in a car all
but
the
it's
time.
a
But
big
New York
issue.
set the trend even for the rest
There's
of the
no
country.
doubt.
Absolutely.
There's
My
no
son
doubt.
lives
but
in
it's just not
San
quite unique,
Francisco.
which is a
Bought
good
his
thing for
first
us.
house in a little town that he could walk to the center city, to the coffee shops, to the restaurants. His daughters could walk to school. And they looked for that. They didn't just happen to stumble on it. That's where they wanted to live. They could have lived in downtown San Francisco. They would have and bought a house. They couldn't. But they found one in a suburb of Oakland, which is an urban suburb. And that's Kent's right. That's the whole country's like the waterfronts are being developed. Downtown Philadelphia has thousands of units on the drawing board
And
for
Manhattan's
residential.
just starting to develop the waterfront. I mean, we're, you know, a city where we've been really
I know,
developing
it's
from
amazing.
inside, and now we're finally getting
Well, that's
to
the
the
way we
water,
used to
and
be.
that's
Yeah.
that's
It
a whole
started
other
that way
boom.
because the waterfront
Of
was
course,
the way
but we
to
went away
gain
from
access for the
Now,
industrial area.
recreational is
So it
where
was
we
always
should
from
be.
the inside out. Now, you know, the waterfront's
the-
being redeveloped.
yeah.
How would you
The
like
city
to own
really
that
has
property in
evolved.
Chelsea Pier right now? I mean, it's unbelievable.
We have
Well, you
we have
such-
buyers who
Steve has a
specifically
pier
want to
just
live
north of it he's
in the West
developing.
20s because they want to be close to Chelsea Piers. I mean that every
Jeff Levine was on my show a couple of times, and I think not his last show, about a year ago, he was on the show and he said he built a building at 555 West 23rd Street. He took a mortgage. He took a permanent mortgage with Northwestern Mutual, fixed rate mortgage, because he was going to have a rental. And then he said to me and probably his partners, he said, you know, look, I'm in a hot neighborhood. I'm right off Chelsea Piers. I'm on all the galleries.
the art district,
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
in the
it's-
art district.
That's the new art center.
It's the
you know,
new art
gallery
center.
Gallery
He said,
center.
fine, I'd get $50, $60 a foot to rent it. I'm going to try to sell it. So he did the condo plan, and people can move in right now, and there are 340 apartments. He's averaging $1,400 a foot.
Yeah.
And he feels it's low because it's Chelsea. And those are people who want to live there, which I think is what we're saying over here. We don't have investors, from what it sounds to me,
they're coming in to live.
in Lower Manhattan, it sounds that most of these people want to live there, maybe with the exception of Cipriani 55 over
most
here.
of them are users.
These
Even
are users.
even if it's
They're
a
all
second home,
users.
it's still a
They're all
user.
there are more users there than you can imagine. I'll tell you why. We give a complete lifestyle choice.
But it's
We
a
really
user.
do, by
Even
the
if
way.
it's a person with a
Probably getting
second
people
home,
from the
it's
suburbs.
still a user.
It's
Yeah,
the
we're
most
not
unbelievable
renting
thing.
it out.
We're refusing, and I'll tell you something about 55 because it's interesting. We were told by our salespeople, it goes back to another question, you know, what's the complexion of the buyer? So we were told by our salespeople, Deutsche Bank's across the street, go with smaller apartments. Wouldn't you know? We have multiple requests to combine units now.
Of course.
Because the bottom line
told you
is that downtown is very appealing to a broader base of people.
Who used to market that? Should have been all
No, you know what? At the end of the day, you tend to be a little bit more
I
pragmatic.
always like plugs on the show for everybody's
Who
Yeah,
did
but
you-
one,
who-
but one
who
of
are
the,
you using?
one
I'm
of the
curious.
things,
Louise Sunshine, who's
Oh, here's
fantastic,
Louise, yeah,
who's
okay.
one of the most creative people you ever met in your life. But my
Edward-
point is, Steve, no one would have thought that the families were going to come down at that point when we first bought the deal, but they are coming down, and so it's a
We've
wonderful
seen,
thing.
we've seen
One of the
families coming
things-
down to that
one
neighborhood
of
for the
the
last
things-
7 years.
They're there.
Yeah, but now
Edward,
it's
let
much
Eddie.
more dramatic
one of the
now.
things that you have
In the
to,
last only 2
Oh,
years.
last 2 or 3 years, forget.
but one of the major dynamics of the city right now that's, you know, opposite of what's going on down in Florida is in Florida, the speculators,
It's all-
80% of a building down there can be speculators.
Right.
So they're looking to flip it, and they can flip it twice before somebody finally moves in. You don't have any of that going on in New York City. Well, any of it. You may have.
You have a limited
Well,
number.
but
But the developers here in New York are also resisting
Edward,
it a
isn't
lot.
some of
But
that-
in our plan,
it's
we
the
have a
AG
year.
rules.
You
But
can't.
Edward,
You
but
can't
it's a
flip it.
user
Wait,
market
I have to
anyway.
ask
Yeah.
the question quick as an interested party. Isn't that part of the reason for that? Isn't the fact that they can't get financing down there unless they pre-sell a certain number of units, so they price them somewhat below maybe the existing resale market, so people can see a margin of profitability.
No, I don't agree.
Steve,
Steve, I
but
don't
even
agree
at
with
the
that.
end of
No,
the
I'm
day,
asking a question.
but let's
I'm not-
no, that's
at the
what they
end of
do.
the day, let's say, so the building's gone through, it's flipped, whatever it is. The end of the day, who's ending up keeping these units? People who are keeping them are renting them out, and they're using it as an investor.
Where?
think
In New York City?
No, down in Miami.
But what about Lower Manhattan, Manhattan? I don't care.
So that's the difference. That's the difference.
There's
At
a
the
big
end of the
difference
day,
between that market or Las
somebody
Vegas
is
and here.
not keeping the unit
Lower
for
Manhattan-
a rental to somebody else. They're keeping it for a user. Las Vegas is a different market. That's
I
why
heard,
it's
I heard a guy
Michael-
refer to Las Vegas in the same way as a very dangerous.
Same-
It is.
There was a
Same
report that
thing.
came out
Las
yesterday
They're not user markets.
about Las Vegas
Three
is
Yeah,
having
same
this
dangerous
problem.
markets.
But
Same
Michael,
problem.
Lower Manhattan surged because there was a lot of product deals to be done down in Lower Manhattan. Midtown prices traded up. Now, by the way, there's it's going to be a little bit slower because the
Tribeca
prices
is
have
probably higher than many places
Michael,
in
if
Midtown
you're
today.
looking to rent, if you're a renter
By far.
today, and you look at the Upper East Side as a young person wanting to live somewhere versus downtown, the deals to rent are in the Upper East Side,
First
not
Avenue, New York.
downtown. That's
Third,
where to
Second
go.
Avenue.
So
Look
what
at the
you're
kids
now
on the
you're
street.
starting to see a different complexion also of restaurants and bars up in the Upper East Side. Why? Because they're responding to the marketplace that's there to attract some of the people.
Since I was
that-
talking about
it's-
Lower
it's a
Manhattan,
completely.
I
no,
mean,
I'm just giving you an
we'll do a
example.
show on no.
No. I'm giving you an example. Lower
Go
Manhattan
to
rent
the
payers-
Lower East
Of
Side.
Lower
If you
Manhattan.
go to the Lower East Side,
Lower
it's even
Manhattan is
No,
great.
I'm
stranger.
saying
Like the
Lower
East Side.
Manhattan's rents
West.
are higher because the demographic, the people want to live there. So you're paying a premium to go to Steve's building at 10 Hanover
All your hot clubs
versus
are
the
downtown.
Upper East Side.
Yeah,
It's-
I realize-
And also,
10
you're
years
paying-
ago, if you ever said that, nobody would
paying-
have.
I realize
people
it's
thought
hard.
we were
You're
nuts.
paying a premium in some of these
people
buildings,
thought we're
but
nuts if we said that.
your overall cost basis, with especially right now with the 421As and the 421Gs,
Steve?
is still low.
I have to cut. It's hard to believe, but having 6 people like you together, 58 minutes really goes very quickly. I think we've had a very interesting group. We've heard about the new PJ Clarkson number of times opening up, Cipriani, 5 Hanover, the Exchange. We've heard about Edwards and everyone else's. I'd really like to thank my guests for appearing today. Ken Swig, President of Swig Equities, Stephen Witkoff, President of the Witkoff Organization, Steve Kligerman, Executive Director of Marketing for Halstead Properties, Stephen Siegel, entrepreneur, proprietor of PJ Clark's
Restaurateur.
and restaurateur, but more important, global chairman
what's
of
the name of the
Brooklyn
restaurant?
Reeks.
Michael, he's also the seller of units at 75th and Columbus. Let's not forget about
75th and
that.
U-
Soon to be
Columbus.
on the market, yes.
CB Richard Ellis, Chris Daly, the Showdrug Organization, and Edward Minskoff, Edward J. Minskoff Equities. Thank you very much. Next month, we leave Lower Manhattan, and we're going to talk about the vibrancy of what's happening north of 96th Street. Thank you.
Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.